All right, it's National Lager Day. We have several partners on the show that fit in that category. Obviously, Sam Adams, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and Abita, straight out of Abita Springs, Louisiana. Ed Ogeron territory. Abita Amber Lager. Please tell us your favorite lager on the Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line, 601-885-3776. Blake Scott was running through conspiracy theories with our next guest, Steve Palazzolo, NFL insider, ProFootballFocus.com. And Blake wants me to start. All right, Dak Prescott is in the NFC East. We know this. We know that from the jump, everybody was bound and determined that Carson Wentz not only had to be better than Dak, but he had to be much better because we've talked about this with Steve. As fans, we are wired out of the gate from the jump. If somebody is a first-round pick, it's tough for us to shake that ever. And so now Carson Wentz has been benched for Jalen Hurts. And Steve Palazzolo, good morning. Where do you think this is going, and do you think that Carson can get the job back by next September 1, Steve?
Yeah, first of all, I got to figure out how you guys are wired down there. So I'm from the Boston area, and as a Red Sox fan, we always, you root for the Red Sox and you root against the Yankees.
Yeah.
So I'm getting the sense that you have to root against the class of 2016 as if you're a Dak fan.
Yes.
You have to root against Carson Wentz and
Correct.
Jared Goff and
Yes.
and Paxton Lynch, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure we have that first before we get into the conspiracies. Carson Wentz is one of the most difficult things to figure out, right? Because he's in year 5 and playing the worst football of his career. So let's not overreact, look back and say, well, this is what Carson Wentz has been this entire time, because it hasn't been. And he's been touted as a good quarterback, and in my glorious middle tier of quarterback that I always talk about, I mean, that's where he's been. And a middle tier quarterback can have a year like in 2017 where Wentz looked like an MVP candidate and an insane touchdown rate, and he was really good at things that were not sustainable, which is play on third down, play under pressure, tight window throws. He was awesome at everything he did in 2017, but there was an inevitable regression there, which is what happened in 2018, where he still played pretty well, and then 2019 he tapered off at the end of the season. So he has played good football. The concerning part is why over this season plus the last 6 or 7 games last year, he's been, one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a huge red flag. It's a major question mark, but I still think the Eagles' best bet is to do what's best for him, and doing what's best for Wentz because they're tied to him with a big contract that kicks in this year. They got to get him right, and I don't think a mental break right now is a bad spot to try to get him back on track. So I think that's a big part of what's happening in Philadelphia. Wentz is slumping. It's an extended slump, but there's better play in there, and it's to the Eagles' best interest to figure out how to get Wentz back on track somehow.
And so, but if you had to bet a couple $100 right now, you would bet that through mini camps in the offseason and training camp that he will be the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles in September of 2021.
Yeah, I would lean that way. Perhaps with a new coach, perhaps with a whole new, because you as a team, we've talked about the importance of the general manager and the head coach and all that stuff. You invest in a head coach, you invest in a quarterback. Well, the quarterback investment is so massive right now. I think the Eagles have to go back and say, okay, how do we have to maximize this? There are trade possibilities, but you're selling him at a low from a play standpoint, but with a massive contract. It's just tough to get value there, if you're trying to trade Carson Wentz. I think he's going to be the guy for the Eagles, but perhaps with a whole new, offensive coordinator, head coach, and you're trying to maximize that. So I also think you see what Jalen Hurts has, right, for a few games, see what he does, see if he can increase his value, and maybe that becomes part of your team building strategy as well, whether you have a really good backup or perhaps, a trade piece if he's really good.
Cool. Steve Palazzolo on the Abita Amber guest line. You're listening to Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. He is with ProFootballFocus.com, and then, of course, he's an NFL insider with them. Now, let's go to Lamar Jackson. Is this so he's a solid at passing, and he is unbelievable off the charts with his legs and his feet and his intuition and so on. Is this sustainable for Lamar and the Ravens, Steve?
So I think it depends on what your expectations are. What are we trying to sustain? So, last year as the MVP candidate, or the MVP that Lamar was, I think that part was unsustainable. The fact they were so efficient last year. You have Lamar's dynamic rushing ability, plus he was so good as a passer last year. He didn't miss a ton of throws, made good decisions. Everything was great. This year's Lamar Jackson was a lot closer to what we at PFF had predicted maybe he was going to look like coming out. He still has accuracy issues. He's willing to go through progressions. He's not a run-first quarterback. I think that narrative was off a little bit coming out. He doesn't look to run. He looks to pass. But when he does run, it's either the design running game, which is, second to none in the NFL when you have him as a designed runner, a part of the run game. And, of course, when he chooses to scramble, he's dangerous in the open field. I mean, I think that component is sustainable. In other words, he'll be an efficient runner. He'll scramble when he needs to, and he'll be an okay passer. And you can create a good offense there. I think it's going to be a challenge if you're always looking to that 2019 performance and saying, hey, why isn't he going to get back to that? Why isn't he going to, throw touchdowns on 9% of his passes and all that stuff? That might be difficult to get back to, but I think the Ravens are going to have a good offense that might get uncomfortable at times because of Lamar's accuracy issues that I think he's had for the majority of his career.
Interesting. But it's almost like in January when things get bogged down and the weather shifts on everybody and the officials allow the DBs to play more aggressive, you almost wonder if what you just described can not only work, but drive them to the AFC Championship game, Steve.
No, I think it's a fair question. I think the answer that the Ravens still haven't come up with is what happens when they're down 14-0, say to Tennessee in the division round. What happens when they're down? And I've thought that their offense this year didn't have as much of the easy stuff built in, the quote unquote easy stuff from a pass game perspective, which Lamar helps create because of his rushing ability. His accuracy isn't as big of a deal because he creates more open throws because of play action and the rushing ability and all that stuff. So you don't have to be as pinpoint, but you still have those games where they run the ball a little bit less. You have must-pass situations. Can you make the comeback against the Titans, the Chiefs, the Steelers, whoever it might be? So, yeah, I think that still is a massive question mark. But, I think the floor of their offense is still high because of Lamar's rushing abilities, the term I keep using for these rushing quarterbacks.
Yeah, and they do a really good job with him. Scheming it up and so on. You see more than we do. PFF.com, great website. Steve Palazzolo, NFL insider with Pro Football Focus. Steve, we've talked a lot about Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf with you the last couple of months, and Tyler Lockett and so on. But Russell and the offense seem to have lost their fastball here for a second. They obviously can get it back. It wouldn't surprise me if they do. What do they need to do, Steve?
Yeah, it's a really weird one because I think when you go back, when you look at the elite quarterbacks through the years and it's like, what's the strategy to stop Peyton Manning or Drew Brees or Tom Brady? I don't know if there ever was one. There wasn't really a strategy. It was kind of like hope they have an off day, hope that they're not seeing the field right. I don't know that there's a strategy to slow down Russell Wilson, but right now he's not seeing the field well. He's not going through his reads. He's taking sacks that he, probably shouldn't be taking. Threw one to a safety when he, had a chance for a comeback the other day and he got away with it. So those are the things. It's tough to predict. And this was, the majority of Russ's career, you could say, when he's on, he's a top 3 quarterback. No doubt about it, he's top 3. But there was always 3, 4, maybe 5 games per year where he was off. And he started to get rid of those games, but all of a sudden, 3 out of his last 5 games, it's been bad Russell Wilson, where things are just off. So I do expect him to get back. Because it's not like it's a trend. It's not like, oh, his mechanics are off. This is off. It's just he gets into some ruts, and I think he can definitely get out of them. I think teams are putting a little bit more attention toward DK, and you're not getting as much production out of Tyler Lockett right now. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but I still think it comes down to Russell Wilson seeing the field, trusting what he sees, making the easy throws. I keep using easy throws, but that's like you just have to check down when you're supposed to check down. You hit the shallow cross when you're supposed to. And he's not doing that. Instead, he's dropping his eyes, seeing the rush, and getting sacked. So I think they'll bounce back, but it's just a bit of a slump right now, I think, for the Seahawks passing game.
All right, let's stay in the NFC. Before I get to the Saints, this guy's just freaky, what he's still doing at 37. Describe Aaron Rodgers' play for the Packers right now.
Yeah, he's always had – I'm going to use the easy stuff again. He's always had the special. He's always had the highlight reel. From the last X number of years, if you take the best throws in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers has some of them. He's up there. He avoids what we call turnover-worthy plays. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. But there was a point where I think in Mike McCarthy's offense and then last year with Matt LaFleur, the easy stuff, the sitting in the pocket, going through progressions, finding open receivers, he was just a little off. He was vacating pockets. This is where I can't pinpoint something that's negative in Russ's game. I could pinpoint what Rodgers was doing. He wasn't playing within structure very well these last few years, since about 2015. All of a sudden, Matt LaFleur is dialing it up. Aaron Rodgers trusts his receivers, and now he has that special combination of winning within structure, and then, oh, by the way, if stuff's not there, he's going to beat you outside the pocket and, off schedule. And that's scary. That's tough. His accuracy is better than it's been in years. His decision-making, his ability to play in and out of structure, all of that stuff has been perfect or much better. And outside of, a game or two, Rodgers has been spectacular. So I think it's just been impressive to see him just revert back to what he had been in 2011, 2014, and those points where he was playing incredible football.
Who's your are the Saints your number one team in the NFC, and then the Packers, or is it where are you going there?
I would lean the Saints, and it's still like with Drew Brees at quarterback though too. Even if he's limited throwing the ball down the field, I still feel better about Brees under center than I do Taysom Hill. So it's the Saints when and if Brees gets back, and then I think the Packers are absolutely dangerous, but the Packers are far more dependent on Aaron Rodgers than the Saints are at this point, right? Because the Saints all-around package has been fantastic. The defense, Alvin Kamara just, taking checkdowns and making something out of it. I feel better about the Saints all-around team. And then I think the Packers, the Seahawks, the Bucks, all these other NFC teams are just so dependent on their quarterback. But the Saints definitely have the all-around team, I think, in the NFC.
And when you look, Sean Payton is 9-0 in the last 2 years with his backup quarterback. How remarkable is that?
Yeah, I think it speaks to Payton. I think it also speaks to the team building, right? You will be hard-pressed to find a better draft than the 2017 draft for the Saints when they bring in Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams. Was that Kamara's year too? They were just – it's unbelievable, right? So I think you go from a Brees-led team for years that didn't have a good defense and, didn't make the playoffs to all of a sudden you have depth all up and down the roster. So I think the roster building's been fantastic. And, of course, Payton deserves credit for adjusting his game to Teddy Bridgewater last year, to Taysom Hill this year. It looks different, but they find ways to win. So, yeah, I think the overall effort by the Saints these last few years has been fantastic from the top down, and very impressive that they've been undefeated without a great quarterback like Drew Brees under center.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, NFL Insider on the Abita Amber guest line as we're talking NFL, marching to the playoffs. We'll see what the Saints can do here over the next couple of weeks. All right, you go Saints, Packers, and then do you go Rams or Seahawks or someone else?
I trust the Seahawks more. I think the Bucs are going to get back into people's good graces over these next 4 weeks. They play the Vikings, the Falcons twice, the Lions. I think the Bucs are going to look better. So I think the Bucs are dangerous, and I think the Seahawks are still dangerous. The Rams' defense is incredible, but trusting Jared Goff on a weekly basis, I think, is a little risky at this point, the way he's been playing. So Seahawks and Bucks, I always lean toward the quarterback. So Russ and Brady, I think, have that chance to still, go on a run in the NFC playoffs.
Blake, you have a question for Steve Palazzolo?
Yes, Steve. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb's been phenomenal, and he was a high pick in the NFL draft. But here's my question. Justin Jefferson with the Vikings has been incredible. Now, I think he's got a better situation given that his starting quarterback hasn't disappeared. They haven't lost half their offensive line. And things have been a little bit better. Having Dalvin Cook perform the way he does makes it easier to catch balls. But CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, are they the clear-cut two best receivers out of this draft class early, or is there somebody else you might go with? And who would you pick of the two?
I think Jerry Jeudy's still in the mix. I mean, we talk about bad situations. He's had Jeff Driscoll. He had the poor dude Kendall Hinton for a game where he had no catches. I mean, you can't look at Jerry Jeudy's numbers and try to compare it to the other guys. He's still an awesome route runner. It's hard. I'm hard pressed to pick anybody over Justin Jefferson right now, though. It's kind of like all the question marks that he had coming out. Can he play on the outside? Can he still he made 12 out of 13 contested catches last year at LSU. Can he do that at the NFL level? He's answering all of those questions. The slick route running, playing on the outside, after the catch ability. I think Justin Jefferson has been the best, and he's I don't know, man. It's tough for me to pick anybody over him at this point, and that surprised me. I thought he was in the next tier behind CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, but yeah, Justin Jefferson's been fantastic. I think it's tough for anybody to match what he's done so far.
Yeah, Blake's been talking about him for weeks now. So this may be early for you because I know you're locked into the season, so you may have to pass on this. We've got a receiver here in the state of Mississippi who's playing like an All-American, and his name is Elijah Moore with Ole Miss. But he's 5'9", but he's built well. Nobody can guard him, Steve. Bama, it doesn't matter. I don't know if you know who he is yet, or that may not be on your radar because you're in season what's going on in the NFL. Do you know of Elijah Moore at Ole Miss?
I know. I mean, I know only what I've seen in games.
Okay.
The receiver class just yet, but I know the numbers. I'm a Biletnikoff voter. I've seen enough of him to know that he's in the Biletnikoff mix and that he's been fantastic this year, but haven't gone back and actually scouted the receiver class for the NFL yet.
Okay. I can't wait to see. He's got unbelievable hands. Evidently, at the college level, he's an elite route runner. He's always open, and then he makes people miss. So, but he's not 6'1" or 6'2",
right,
or even 6'3". So, be interesting to see what the NFL.
I was going to ask that too. When you see what some of the receivers have done in the league recently, and you obviously like Antonio Brown was a freak short guy. Tyreek Hill, what he's been able to do. There's some others around the league, and then you see the size of an A.J. Brown, of a D.K. Metcalf, and some of those guys. What is there a underlying trait that you can tell over the last 3 to 4 years from these guys at the receiver position that are coming out, where you say, okay, the underlying trait, the one key factor is this in determining whether or not you most likely will be successful? Is it separation? Is it just purely route running? Is it purely hands? I'm just curious because we see a lot of different styles of receiver, but there's got to be an underlying factor that goes into finding the guy that can make plays.
I think it's a great question, Blake, because here's the thing about receiver, right? If there's one thing, if it was to choose one thing, it's the ability to get open. So it would be separation. So just from like an objective view, did you get open or did you not? And do you do it more often than others? I think that's the bottom line. That was what pointed us toward Michael Thomas a couple of years ago. He just knew how to get open, right? So guys know how to do that. But I think at the receiver position, too, in the NFL, there's 3 of them on the field at any given time. And I think having specific traits that essentially challenge defensive backs, whether it is size, whether it's speed, whether it's quickness after the catch ability, I think building your team with guys who have variety of skill sets is the best way to go. So, even if you're not going to become an A.J. Brown number 1 receiver or a DK number 1 receiver, you could be a number 2 if you have something that challenges the cornerback, whether it is just deep speed, whether it is your releases and separation, whatever it might be. So I think there's room for different style receivers, the people that you've described. But if there's one thing that you need, you can't say, well, this guy makes contested catches and let that be the number 1 thing, because it's really tough to sustain that in the NFL. You got to get open first and foremost. So that's the most important thing if you're going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Okay, that tells me Elijah Moore is going in the first 64 picks and may even go in the first 30 to 40 with what you and Steve just went back and forth on. That's just I think it's almost slam dunk. He's off the board in the second round. Blake?
Who would you pick, Steve, at the receiver position in the last 2 drafts? Who, if you're saying I get one of these guys, who is that one? And then my follow-up would be, is there any chance Devontae Smith could be better than any of those guys that we saw in the last couple of years?
Oh, man, Devontae's been so good. He has been so good.
Freak.
And the scouts say that he ran in like the 4.5s or something. I think they had some broken stopwatches last spring. He's going to break that. I might have to lean Justin Jefferson right now based off what I've seen. I mean, look, no. I mean, Justin Jefferson, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got DK. I can't remember what I say here every week. Do I say A.J. over DK?
You say A.J. over DK.
Yeah.
I'll lean A.J., right? I mean, DK probably instills a touch more fear into the defense, but A.J. Brown, I think, has a cleaner all-around game. I think that ability, even though Justin Jefferson has been so slick as a route runner and at the catch point, A.J. Brown just is a dude and is a freak, and I would probably take him over everybody in the last 2 classes now, knowing what I know now.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. I've got a minute. Steve, real quick, Josh Allen with the Bills. Most people haven't watched them in the last 20 years. They've got something going. Describe his play for us, if you would.
He's really streaky. Early in the season, he was fantastic. He took a bit of a step back, and he was so good on Monday Night Football. When he's hot, he's tough to defend. The Bills have done a great job of building around him, receivers who get open at every level, and Allen has really improved his accuracy. He's improved his ability to just hit short and intermediate throws, and then the deep ball has been night and day since last year where he was all over the place. So the Bills attack every level of the field, and Allen has improved greatly with a cannon for an arm, but it's his accuracy that has made him so much better this year. Plus, he can run the ball when he scrambles, so it makes the Bills really tough to defend.
I know this is fluid. Are they your second-best team in the AFC right now?
It's funny because they're favored against the Steelers this weekend, and I don't think it's crazy. I think the Bills are just such a good all-around team, and I do trust their offense. Their play calling is great, too. It's a big factor in Allen's success. So I do like the Bills to beat the Steelers and to be, right there behind the Chiefs at this point.
I can't wait. This is going to be a fun weekend. And then tonight's game, Patriots and Rams. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Best website when it comes to football in America, PFF.com. Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it, bud.
Always. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That was fun. Blake Scott looks forward to that segment every week.
It's my favorite segment we ever do.
From noon until after the Sunday night football game, Blake Scott does not leave a TV set or streaming on his phone or iPad.
We didn't even get to the Browns.
NFL.
Didn't even get to the Browns. I could do a whole segment on the Browns.
I couldn't, but we may hit the Browns next week.
They loved Baker coming out.
I know.
PFF did, so it's an interesting story.
Oh, well, the storylines going into these last few weeks in the NFL are incredible. And we'll see how many Mississippi guys end up in the NFL playoffs. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, brought to you by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Their new retail location, Gluckstadt, Madison County, acebolt.net.